Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 313. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about self-care, which is a super important topic that I haven't covered in ages. The only episode in 313 or 312 previous episodes that I've done that covered self-care was number 12 with Jayne Ifeacho. Now, I feel like I've skirted around the topic from time to time. I did 2 episodes on burnout, including episode 22 with Jayne Morris, and a solo episode not too long ago, 293. But I think it's time I did a full show on this, so here we are. This is something that's been on my mind a lot lately because, as you may have guessed, I feel like I'm needing a bit more self-care myself, and I've been trying to pay more attention to that. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what is self-care and what isn't it, or what it isn't, why it's so important, how can you tell if you need some, how do you do it, how not to do it, what types of people need to pay special attention to self-care. I mean, I think this is something that's important for everyone, but I think some people need to really pay extra attention to this. I'm going to talk about how often is it necessary to practice self-care, where to go, what to do, how to plan self-care on a low budget, and how to make it free. It does not have to be expensive. So, hope you find this episode interesting and useful, and I hope that it inspires you to take better care of yourself. So, here we are, self-care. What is it? So, you can find different definitions online, but for me, self-care is taking action to care for your own personal, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health and well-being. So I think a lot of us, especially people who are parents, tend to be really good about taking care of other people. You know, helping out friends, helping out family, doing people favors. Of course, if you have kids, you've got to take care of them. And a lot of us aren't so good at taking care of ourselves. And that can lead to us being out of balance, stressed, unhappy. We talk about the oxygen mask analogy a lot, but this is the perfect time to use that. So how they say on a flight, if there's a problem and the oxygen mask comes down, you put your own mask on before helping someone else. Because if you pass out, no one's going to be able to help them. And this is kind of like that. So in order for you to be able to care for your children, your friends, your family, in order for you to be productive in your business, at your job, you need to be in good shape. You need to be in good mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual shape. You need to be in balance. You need to be good yourself. You need to be just in a good place. Because if you're not in a good place, you're not going to be able to help anyone else. You're going to be, as I said, really stressed. You're not going to be focused. It's going to be hard for you to get things done, and you're going to be exhausted all the time. So self-care is super, super important to just stay balanced and be happy and do the things we want to do in life. So how can you tell if you need self-care? You might be feeling tired, either like sleepy tired or just physically tired. Tired, exhausted, stressed. You might notice that you've been working too hard or you've been working longer hours and you're really starting to feel it. Maybe people have been saying you look bad. Maybe people at the office or friends or family have been saying, oh, have you been getting enough sleep lately? Or are you doing okay? You're not looking so good. If you've been hearing comments like that, that's another good sign you might need some self-care. Or maybe it's something like you're not getting your work done, like you're really distracted, you're not able to concentrate or focus on getting work done. It takes you a long time to get things done because you're constantly playing games on your phone or checking social media. You can't focus on the task at hand. That's a sign of burnout, and it's also a sign that you need self-care. You might not be getting enough sleep or exercise, or you might not be eating good food. Maybe you've been eating out a lot or getting takeaway, or just not eating. Maybe you've been so busy you've been skipping lunches, I'm a big fan of fasting, so I want to kind of frame this by saying, like, skipping lunches is not a bad thing. Skipping breakfast is not a bad thing necessarily. I don't eat lunch or breakfast because I eat one meal a day because I do intermittent fasting. But I do a very conscious form of intermittent fasting. I make sure I get enough water, I make sure I get enough electrolytes, and my one meal a day has enough calories for my lifestyle. So if you are consciously fasting, that's great if it works for you. But the whole skipping meals because you've been focusing on something else, that's a sign that you're not taking care of yourself. Or maybe you've been getting sick a lot. Maybe you just come down with every cold that everyone has. Maybe your gut allergies are worse this year and you're just not feeling well. Maybe you're just not been feeling like your health is good. So basically, general unwellness. Those are the signs. So if any of those things kind of rang a bell as I was reading them out or discussing them, take note. Maybe you're not getting enough self-care. So I think there's certain types of people that need to pay special attention to self-care. I mean, I think this is something that is absolutely important for everyone, and I think it's a very important part of a balanced lifestyle. But I think people that have mental illness of any kind need to take special attention to care for themselves. People that have autism, Asperger's, that would be me. I know that I easily burn out, I easily get stressed, so I need to take care of myself. I need to really manage my energy levels, and I need to make sure that I'm getting enough downtime. People who consider themselves to be highly sensitive people, or HSPs, you will probably need to pay special attention to self-care. If you're in a high-stress career, or you're running a startup, or you're self-employed, this is something you need to pay attention to because it can be so easy to put too much attention on work or business and not pay attention to ourselves. And sometimes when we're self-employed, we make a conscious decision to ignore our health and well-being to focus on the business because we think that's what we need to do, when in reality, that might just be a ticket to burnout. Parents also need to pay attention to self-care because they're caring for children. Also, people who are caring for a family member or parents or special needs people. If you're a carer or a parent, you also need to pay attention to self-care because your focus is often going to be on caring for someone else rather than caring for yourself. But again, if your glass isn't full, if your batteries aren't charged, it's going to be extra hard for you to care for someone else. And I know I can hear myself talking, and I'm sure that some people who are listening to this are probably thinking that self-care is a luxury. And I really don't think it is. Because, and I'm probably going to say this 1,000 times in this episode, but if we are not in a good place ourselves, we can't take care of other people, we can't fulfill our responsibilities, we can't live the lives we want to live. And oftentimes we can't even survive the basic stuff that we have to do, forget ideal lifestyle stuff. If we are not in a good place and if we're not paying attention to self-care, it can make everything so much more difficult. So self-care is not a luxury. It is absolutely not a luxury in my opinion. And it's also not selfish. And I think this is another fear that a lot of people have, that by putting themselves first, by taking care of their needs first, by making sure that they are well first, that's being selfish. And again, it's not, because if we're not in a good place, we can't help anyone else. And I'm not saying that our only functions in life are to help other people, but I think that's a really good argument to people who worry that they're being selfish by practicing self-care. It's absolutely not selfish. It is not a luxury, and it's something that we need to learn to make a priority in our lives. Because again, if we are not well, then we can't function in all the things that we need to do in life. Life is getting so busy. There are so many responsibilities. so many things that we have to do, so many things that we want to do. And if we're not in good shape, we're not going to be able to do any of those things. Or if we are going to be able to do them, we're not going to do them well. And it's just not worth going through life when you're a stressed, frazzled ball of chaos. So I think self-care is one of the ways that we can kind of come back to our center, come back to balance, and kind of start getting our lives back in order. So I think an important thing to cover is how often is it necessary to practice self-care? And I think there are kind of 3 types of self-care, or 3 categories of self-care. So there's emergency self-care, which if you've been feeling frazzled or burnt out or just not in a good place, what you probably need is emergency self-care. So doing things, fitting things into your schedule now, a little bit every day, so that you can start feeling a little bit better and get back to that balanced, centered place. So there's emergency self-care. And then I think the other 2 categories might be lumped into 2. So I came up with maintenance and preventative. So preventative self-care is, of course, regular self-care that is going to prevent you from getting in that emergency state. And it's also really maintenance. So let's call it 2 categories. So emergency self-care and then maintenance preventative, because maintenance is like once you've got into that balanced place, maintaining that. So how often is it necessary? That's going to be different for everyone. And it depends on what's right for you. So you might need a little bit every day. You might need big chunks once a week. Probably a little bit every day, at least one little thing every day is probably a good idea. You need to play around with what works for you in terms of frequency, time, what's reasonable. I mean, I think 5 or 10 minutes a day is reasonable for everyone, no matter who we are. Even if you're a parent, even if you're working full time and running a business, you've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And if you don't, email me and we'll figure it out, because there's got to be a way. And I think that is enough for maintenance, probably for a lot of people. But if you're in a bad spot, again, you might need some extra emergency self-care. I spend more than that every morning. I would consider a lot of my morning routine to be self-care, because I'm doing healing practices, I'm doing activities that I like, I'm taking care of myself. But I'm super sensitive, so every once in a while I need extra stuff, and I've really been feeling like I need extra self-care lately. Which is confusing, because I feel like this is something I do on a regular basis. So pay attention. Don't just assume that because you do a little something every day that the extra stresses of life haven't added up. You might need extra self-care even if you think you're good at self-care. So pay attention to that. Like I said, again, if you feel like you haven't been able to focus, if you feel like you've been extra tired, if you're just not feeling right, if you're feeling out of center, stop and think about what you might do. Practice more self-care. And again, just because you ramp up your self-care for like a few days or a few weeks, doesn't mean that you need to keep that going. Maybe you just need extra self-care for 5 or 10 days, and then you can go back to your usual. This is probably something that you're also going to have to adjust as needed depending on your lifestyle. Obviously, if you have a busier lifestyle, you're going to need more self-care because you've got more responsibilities, more stresses. So adjust as needed and really check in with yourself on a regular basis to see what you need. Is your self-care practice serving you? Is it enough? Is it not enough? Does it need to change? How can you mix things up? There are so many things you can do to practice self-care. And I think because we're defining this as mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health and well-being, there are so many things you could do for each category. So what I would suggest is, if you can, depending on where you're listening to this, grab your journal, grab a piece of paper, open a file on your computer or on your phone, and start making notes. So if I say things that appeal to you, write that down. If the things that I say trigger other ideas for you, write those things down. And make up a list. like a menu of self-care things. And I think this is really, really important because when we're frazzled, when we're stressed, when we're really in need of emergency self-care, a lot of times we can't think of what to do because we're just in such a bad place. So if you have your menu of preferred self-care activities, you can refer to that menu and just pick something off that and do it. And I think that makes it a lot easier. Try to have a variety of things that take 5 or 10 minutes, things that take half an hour, things that take an hour, things that are like a half day, a full day, a weekend. So many things you can do. So I'm going to start giving you ideas. And again, write these down so that you can make your own self-care menu of things to do. So setting boundaries, I think, can be a self-care practice. So if you're the kind of person who's constantly saying yes to everything and you can never say no, saying no to things that you don't have time for or that you don't want to do, that can absolutely be a self-care practice because that is you taking care of your time, your energy, your schedule, and respecting your need for balance. Some more obvious things: meditation, yoga, mindfulness, journaling, all that stuff is really good self-care stuff. And I say journaling because I think it is a good self-care practice. But journaling also leads me into the kind of personal development mindset stuff that I do. And while I do think that healing and mindset work can be a form of self-care, sometimes it can exacerbate the situation and make us feel even worse because sometimes it takes time to process and to integrate the work that we do if we do this deep inner work. And so I do think this inner work and inner healing is self-care, but also sometimes it generates a need for extra self-care while you're integrating because it can be really stressful to integrate, or it might cause sleeplessness, or it might cause problems focusing. So be careful when you're doing healing work and mindset work and that kind of deep change work that I'm always talking about because yes, it's self-care, I think, but it can also generate a need for other kinds of self-care to care for yourself while you're recovering or integrating the stuff that you have healed. And I've been becoming really aware of this lately because of my plant spirit healing apprenticeship, because we're doing a lot of shamanic journeys, and this stuff is really deep work. And I just came back from a weekend, last weekend, where we were working with Tulsi. And I really liked this plant. I was really, really excited about the kind of work that it does because it's super deep and you can work with Tulsi to heal past lives and soul purpose, and you can renegotiate soul contracts and do really deep work. And so I came back from this weekend where we'd be doing really deep work, and I was so excited about Tulsi. On Monday morning, in my morning routine, I did 3 more journeys with myself, doing really deep past life stuff and healing stuff, which was great, but I was really exhausted from the weekend, still integrating that stuff. And then I created 3 more things that I needed to heal and integrate. And so Tuesday, I was exhausted. I slept in a little bit later, which was good. And I was planning to go to kickboxing in the evening. I couldn't even go. I was so physically tired because I was integrating all this stuff that I'd done for myself. So again, with healing and mindset work, pay attention because you might need extra self-care to integrate that stuff. What else? Cooking healthy food for yourself, or ordering healthy food, or just eating fresh stuff. So a lot of times you can get in the habit of buying door-bought food or takeaway or fast food, and that can sometimes not be good for our bodies. So eating healthy things like salads and fresh fruits and vegetables and fresh whole foods can be part of a self-care practice. So if you realize you've not been eating well, you've not been eating the things that are good for your body, that your body really enjoys, stop and add some stuff that you know your body really likes. Exercise. Exercise is really important and it can really change your life if you haven't been doing it. So find something that you like and do it. And if you're the kind of person who knows your body responds well to exercise, you used to like exercise, but you've fallen out of the habit, try to get back into making it a habit because exercise don't need to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, is super important. And maybe you're the kind of person who hates going to the gym. Maybe you hate running. Go for a walk. I don't know. Do something like move your body, dance, yoga, something. And if you're the kind of person who's never found an exercise thing that you enjoy, try something new. Go online, find a class. A lot of different schools will have like the first class will be free. You can go around, do like a taster of like all the different classes in your area. Try something new and see what works for you. Again, walking, going for a walk, that's free. Reading a book can be an act of self-care, especially if you're reading something fiction or something that will give your brain a rest. For years, I got into the habit of thinking that the only books that I should read were business and marketing books, and that was all that I read. And so my brain never got a rest because I was constantly running my business, marketing my business, and reading about business and marketing in my leisure time. Then I discovered fiction, or should I say rediscovered fiction, and I realized that was really good for giving my brain a rest. So, and I was just talking to someone about this today who was saying that they needed to do some task and they were going to listen to a business podcast in the background as they were doing this task. And as they were saying it, they realized that was not going to give them a rest. So, if you're going to listen to a podcast, maybe don't listen to a podcast where you're learning something. Maybe listen to a comedy podcast or audiobook of something fiction, or read a fiction book. Try consuming content that's not learning content. And I think this is really important, especially for people who are self-employed and people who are addicted to learning, because we can get so focused on like learning and wanting to learn new things, and it's so exciting, and learning is fun. I love learning stuff, but it can be exhausting, and sometimes our brains need a rest. So if you're going to listen to a podcast again, try not to learn something. Give your brain a rest. Creating things like art. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to write poetry. Maybe you want to paint something. Crafts. Like there's so much stuff you can do to be creative. And again, you could do this on your own if you have something you like doing, or you could take a class and give something new a try. So as part of your physical health and well-being and caring for yourself in that way, maybe you've had a chronic health issue or a chronic pain or something that's been bothering you, and you haven't seen a doctor about it. Go see a doctor. That's also self-care. It's the doctor who's going to be treating you, but the act of you taking yourself to the doctor and making your health a priority is self-care. There's lots of easy stuff you can do, like drinking more water. I really pay attention to the water that I drink, especially since I do intermittent fasting. But I think it's safe to say that most people probably don't drink enough water. I always have a pint glass of water on my desk. I find pint glasses are good because they're big. I don't have to focus on drinking 8 glasses of water a day. I have 4 pint glasses, I just touched my glasses, I said that. 4 pint glasses a day, more or less, sometimes 3 plus herbal teas. I usually also have kind of a hot drink on my desk as well, so I'll have a herbal tea or a coffee or something. But drinking more water is really, really important, and that is an act of self-care. It's fast, it's easy, it doesn't take too much time, and it's free if you drink tap water. Also, getting extra sleep. Now, I know this is challenging for a lot of people, but if you're tired, you need more sleep. I really found that having a Fitbit taught me why I was so tired all the time, because time in bed does not necessarily equal time asleep. It was taking me a while to fall asleep, and I was not getting the 8 hours that I thought I was getting. I always used to say that I really needed 9 hours of sleep to feel well. I didn't need 9 hours of sleep. I just needed 9 hours in bed to get 8 hours of sleep. That's improved since then. But having trackers like a Fitbit or other stuff like that can really help you realize how much exercise you're getting, how much sleep you're getting, and how you can take better care of yourself. So if you're feeling tired, get extra sleep. Either take a nap or try to go to bed a little bit early or try to wake up a little bit later. If you're the kind of person who likes to snooze, stop it. Set your alarm for the latest time possible and set 2 alarms and make yourself get up. That interrupted snooze sleep is not good. Give yourself as much time to have deep sleep and REM sleep as you can, because that's the quality sleep, not the snooze sleep. So stop snoozing, get more sleep, like proper sleep. That's self-care. Asking friends or family for support, that's also self-care. If you've got kids, maybe ask someone to watch the kids so that you can have some time to yourself. Go to a cafe, go to the beach, go to a park. Get help with the things you need to get help with so that you can make self-care a priority. Get out in nature. I talk a lot about nature. I wrote a book about trees and how they can help us. Get out in nature. That can be a massive self-care practice. There's so many things you can do in nature. You can walk, you could sit, you could meditate, you could cycle. You can do all kinds of things in nature. And nature can be really good for de-stress. Decluttering can also be a form of self-care. That's not necessarily taking care of your body, but it's definitely taking care of your mental, emotional health and well-being, because if your house is full of clutter, if your office is full of clutter, if your desk is full of clutter, it's really stressful. So go through your house, go through your office, go through your desk, declutter shit, get rid of it. And that is also an act of self-care because you're taking care of your space so that your mental and emotional health can be more relaxed, clear, free. Going offline is also another thing you can do for self-care. We're so tied to our computers, to our phones, to our tablets. Get off that shit and do something else. Go offline, hide that stuff. Put it in a drawer, put it in your, put it somewhere you can't see it and do something else. Go for a walk without your phone. Do something without devices. Stretch. I mentioned yoga earlier, but maybe just do a stretch. This morning, as part of my morning routine, I've been trying to do different things. So one of the things that I want to improve is doing the splits, which I can't do, but if I could, that would make kickboxing easier because I could kick higher. So I have decided to make it a priority to stretch more. And I've on YouTube and I found some videos on how to do the splits and there were all these stretches. And so I did like an hour of that this morning. Stretching felt really, really good. It's helping me work toward a goal and it's taking care of my body. You could take a bath with some essential oils, with some bubbles, with a book, candles, wine, cheese. Have a bath however you like. That's really relaxing. It's great for self-care. Spending some time with a pet. Maybe you have a dog, you could take your dog for a walk. If you have a cat, you could just sit with your cat and pet your cat. Spending time with a pet can be a really nice form of self-care because it is taking care of them, but it's also taking care of us because pets can be so nourishing and relaxing and just really good for de-stressing. Do something you love, whether it's a hobby, going to a museum, like what stuff do you like to do? Doing those things can be self-care because it makes you happy. You could have a spa day. You could go get a massage. And I know this may sound expensive to a lot of people, but a lot of spas will have fairly inexpensive half day, full day. You can just go use the facilities, maybe go to the steam room, the sauna, sit and read a book. That's something can be quite affordable. And if you think it's not, go online and look at spas in your area or look at a gym in your area. Sometimes you can get like a day pass, which is quite affordable. That can be a really good way to unwind and relax. So tons of things to do. I think that's really covered kind of where to go and what to do. In terms of where to go, I've mentioned a lot of places, but also what are places that you like visiting? Avebury was my thing for so long. I made so many trips to Avebury, and I really consider that to have been part of self-care because I was walking, I was spending time in nature, I was doing things that I loved in a place that I love. A couple years ago, I was really into Glastonbury. I think it was 2 years ago, it was before I started work on the book. I was alternating 1 month in Glastonbury, 1 month in Avebury, 1 month in Glastonbury, 1 month in Avebury, and I found both of those places to be just places I love, but also really deeply relaxing and nourishing. So go to the places that you love. And that could be a day trip, a weekend trip. It could be just 5 minutes to your local park. I have to make a big deal out of this. You can if you want to, but you can also make it simple, which is why I think it's so important, bringing you back to your self-care menu, to have so many different things. Short things, long things, close things, far things, long things, short things. I just said that. Expensive things, cheap things. free things. Have a variety of things so that you have no excuses. And whenever you realize that you need self-care, you can just pick something off your menu and find the perfect thing because you've got a variety of things. So, how to plan self-care on a low budget? I think that's really, really easy. Like I said, a lot of the stuff is free. So setting boundaries, saying no, that's free. And if you're saying no to other activities, that's probably even going to save you money. Meditation, you can download something online for free and do it. Yoga, there's free YouTube videos with the yoga. Same for stretching. That's what I did this morning. Mindfulness, you can find stuff free. Journaling, very low cost. Get yourself a spiral notebook if you want something cheap, or use your computer or your phone and create a file there. Can be very inexpensive or free. Cooking healthy food for yourself. Unfortunately, healthy food is usually a bit more expensive than crappy food, but cooking for yourself is definitely probably going to be less expensive than buying food elsewhere. Exercise, you can pay for that, or it can be inexpensive. There's lots of stuff you can do at home, which I've already mentioned. You can go for a walk, you can go for a run. Yeah, sometimes you need gear to do exercise, sometimes you need proper shoes. But if we're just talking about going for a walk, you just need a decent pair of shoes. Probably you've got shoes that you can go for a walk around the block in. Reading a book, you can go to the library and get books for free. Podcasts, free. Creating art, doing crafty stuff, you're probably going to have to pay some money for that, but it can be low cost. Seeing a doctor, depends on where you live in the world, but most developed nations, that is free if you have like the NHS or something like that. If you live in the United States, I'm sorry, but that will cost you. But it's your health, so if you feel like you need to see a doctor, absolutely do. Drinking more water, again. You can buy a filter or you can drink tap water. Filtered water is probably better for you, but water's not expensive. Getting extra sleep, that's free. Asking friends and family for support, yeah, maybe you'll have to help them out sometime, but you can do an exchange, and that's not going to cost you probably any money. Getting out into nature, that could probably be free, depending on how close you live to nature, but probably there's a park in your town, and that's free. Decluttering, that's free. In fact, if you declutter stuff and have stuff to sell, you could even make some money. Going offline, free. Taking a bath, you've got to pay for your water bill, but that's pretty much free. Spending time with a pet, if you've already got a pet, that's free. Doing something you love, like a hobby or a museum, that could cost money or it could be free, but there's a whole different range of prices for that. And like I said, spa day, that's probably less expensive than you think it is, depending on what you go for, but there's something for everyone's budget. Practicing self-care does not need to be expensive. It does not need to break the bank. It does not need to even cost anything. There's so many things you can do for free. So hope that you have taken the time to make the list, to make yours a self-care menu. If you haven't, please do that now. That is your action plan. If you haven't done it already, make a really robust self-care menu so that when you need self-care, you know what to do. And it's not just when you need self-care, like fit this stuff into your schedule. So, I'm a big fan of Google Calendar. I block this stuff into my calendar. You should do that too. It's really, really surefire way of making sure that this stuff happens. So, I hope you have found this interesting and useful. I hope you have understood that self-care is super, super important. It is not selfish. It is non-negotiable unless you want to end up in burnout, which I hope you don't. I think most of us have burnt out at some point or another, and it's not good. And it takes a lot more time to recover from burnout than it does to prevent this stuff. So make sure, again, that on your self-care menu, you have stuff for emergency self-care, that you have stuff for preventative, that you have stuff for maintenance, and there you go. If you have any super exciting ideas for self-care that I haven't mentioned and you would like to share with me, as always, you can drop me a line, let me know what you think, let me know what you do, and email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch there. I would love to hear what you do for self-care. And Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe or leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this podcast. It would really mean the world to me, and it would help more people find out about this show. So next week's episode is going to be another solo episode, and I look forward to speaking with you then. So remember to visit hollywharton.com/313 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.